obvious progress on the plantation in the midst of the brutality and the torture. There was obviously progress. But to sustain and embed, if it's possible, if the alignment of all the stars is correct now, and it's time for us to rise as a unified group of people to restore humanity on the planet, to pull that up as the dominant system. If that's where we're at right now, then we have to know for ourselves that it is unification of oneself. The first principle of Kwanzaa is unity. And until and unless you unify yourself, how do you unify with anybody else? And so as individuals, and then as collectives, and then as this, and then as that, excuse me, Mama, we grow this thing. So absolutely, there has been progress. We're able to sit here and articulate. You know what I'm saying? We have a young sister able to make a film about it and to stimulate conversations. Absolutely, there is progress. There just hasn't been a win of the war yet. And I just so have a vision of what it's like, because I've been in communities where we've had those moments, we've had those years, we've had those experiences of when people act collectively in love and support of each other. And the vision of it as a sustained way of living to become the norm. Yeah.
And I will have to jump on that, because for me it was like journey to blackness. That's how I call it. When I came here and I got called black, I would tell people I'm not black. And people get offended. Rightfully so. But rightfully so, I was not black. I grew up in Senegal. I grew up as a Senegalese girl. I grew up as a Sarr before even being Senegalese. So when I walked in Detroit and people was like, I'm black, I was like, no, I'm not. Because there was nothing in my social construct that was linked to being black. Black for me was a color, was not a culture, was not a people. None of that was linked to that word. And people got offended, and I got offended. It was the funniest thing ever. Like, you calling me out of my name, and you have the nerve to be offended because I didn't accept you calling me out of my name. And that is like the most difficult experience. And this is our people that you come to know, you come to love, and you're like, okay, so what just happened? So fast forward 2015, 2016. I don't own a TV, and I'm glad I don't, but anytime I turn on any social media, a black person was killed. And nothing happened. And somebody else is killed. And nothing happened. And somebody else is killed. And I could not take it no more. To the point, like my nephew who loved, oh my God, America is his dream. When I say you're coming for Christmas, he said, nah, I kill black people. And I'm not coming over there. And I was like, wow, so you're just not gonna come see me? He said, no, I'm a black, no, I'm not coming to your country, people are crazy. But at the same time, I was laughing at that. At the same time, I was fighting an internal fight, because some of my African brothers would be like, why are you in the street marching for Black Lives Matter? You're not black.
Really?
Wow. That's the reality. Whole conversation, though. This question
and this
of Africans and Americans.
And this is what happened. It's like,
am I an American? Seriously?
It took a while.
Thank you.
Right.
It took a while for me to explain why I felt the need to be in those streets. Now my nephew got stopped in Royal Oak, and everything went down in my community because people could not believe this young child that doesn't do nothing, straight A student, all the bells and whistles, got stopped by the police and got frisked and got treated like any other black person. So when we had to sit down and have this conversation that was so devastating, I was the only one smiling in the room, and people were like, why are you smiling? And I say, because through this pain, now you're not gonna ask me no more why I was in the street. Because when we come here, we live in our little bubble. We hold on to what we have, which is our cultural identity. So we come here, you speak English, they say you have an accent, you don't look right, you don't write, everything is thrown at you like they say. So you do hold on to that identity because that's your only pride. You don't have nothing else because assimilation is a very difficult path to go through. But while we're doing that in our safe zone and safe environment, we are not looking at the environment that we are in, which is unfortunately for us one of the most racial, the most brutal environment I have ever been. I lived in Europe before I came here, but I have never been put in a spot where I had to stand for everything that I represent. Only in this country I was asked to stand for every single part of myself. As a woman, as a black person, as a Muslim, as an immigrant, as everything you want. I had to stand for it because if I don't, somebody's gonna try to push me away. But to sit here is like to have a conversation within that unit and let them know that unfortunately we don't see it. We are so ingrained into trying to make the little money, get our children go to school and send money home, have fit into world. While this world is like rippling around. Well, when we walk down those streets, unfortunately, we walk down in that skin. And the person who is stopping us at the bus stop, the person who is going to put a bullet in me, don't know my name is Fatou-Seydi. By the time he know how to spell it, I'm already 6 feet under.
Speak.
So that for me is like, how far did I get into my journey to blackness? Coming from Senegal. And I know some of my other friends who went through the same journeys and went through the same awakening. And it was because we landed into communities that actually was like, hey, come on, you're one of ours. And the more we have those experiences, I think the easier it's gonna get to just plug back to where we are. But unless we accept to have this conversation, I don't feel like that we are going nowhere because I see the conversation from both sides, from this side and from that side. And I always, my sister's right there, she knows what I'm talking about. I always try to see how can we walk those spaces. Because those spaces, we need to walk them back and forth. But we were not taught to walk back and forth together. And together.
Mama Carol Windsor was another one who stood. People didn't know whether she was from the Caribbean or Africa or America. And she stood also. She was another one, like Mama Sadie, who bridged and worked to unite us, overcome the obstacles.
There's a comment here. And then I see, okay, I see
yes.
now.
Yes.
So I'll come here and then I'll come to that side.
Yes.
Hola everyone. Hola Sadie. I made it. I really enjoyed being here. I came late, but Sadie and I have been talking for a long time anyway. So, and I love everyone's perspective at the table. I agree with a lot of it. Yo soy Boricua, I'm Puerto Rican. And so 90% of the African slave trade was in the Caribbean. 5% came to the United States. And here again, it's 2016, and I find myself at 40 years old, still trying to educate other people on who I am. I feel like I'm a minority amongst a minority. Even though I know I don't like using that word minority because we are the majority. And I have, in my history, my personal history, I have so many beginnings. Culturally, ancestrally, I know my roots all the way back to the tribe. So when someone questioned me on who I am, I know, I really do. And down to the rhythms. There was a friend of mine sitting in my living room and he was playing, he was from Ghana, Accra. So he's making drums and he was playing a rhythm. And I said, wait a minute, we have a rhythm like that in my country. He's like, what? So we start playing it. And it ended up that we were distant relatives, right? Another time in school, Los Muñequitos de Matanzas is a group from Cuba. My friend from Nigeria came in my house, and I was listening to the music from Cuba, and he's like, what are you doing? What is this? What is this? I thought I'd offended him or something. And then I said, this is music from Matanzas in Cuba. And he called his father in Nigeria, put the phone up, and his father said, I thought you were in Detroit, where are you? It ended up that the dialect that was being spoken in Cuba had not been spoken, and it was getting lost in his tribe. So his father nonetheless left Nigeria, went to Cuba, and met my friends in Matanzas. For me, I know who I am. Being here in this city, to this day, I still have to fight against other people who look like me to say I'm not who I am, and they have no idea who they are. They're wearing prints and things like that to say I'm African, but that's not who you are on that continent, not that country. And science has caught up with us to help us figure something out, but still, we feel like we have to hold the definition of what Africanness is. I'm your brother, sister, cousin, mother. I was here. Our history didn't even, in the Americas, didn't even start with slavery. Our people did trade with the Mayans and Olmecs, but a lot of people that challenge me who I am don't get it. And I get it from everyone. I'm not African enough. I'm not Latin enough. I'm not Indio enough. But I know I am enough, and I do not feel like I have to explain. But one of the problems that I do have with the African culture or Afrocentric is that it's nice to know who you are and have an African-centered school, but if your African-centered school, and I'm gonna say this museum, if I don't see me in it, and there's thousands of us in this city right now, if I don't see myself, you are ignoring me. You are excluding me consciously and intentionally. You are excluding my history, my participation in jazz, in hip hop. We were there right with you, holding hands. You have the wax and I got the rhythm. What's up? The same rhythms, there's a rhythm in hip hop, one of the oldest songs, there's an African rhythm in that song. That's the basis of hip hop right now. And I have old school b-boys denying that fact. Why? Because them themselves don't know. But I do. I'm the perfect middle between Africa and African Americans. But here, 2016 going 2017, I'm not a part of this conversation. We're not a part of those conversations. We're not part of the celebrations. We're still having our separate things. And I would love, and I've been doing it on my own for a while now, to continue the conversation, but the celebration of all of us, because we have no more time to be shucking and jiving and then pointing the finger, who's this, who's that. We do not have any more time. But I will love to not, from this point forward, to not be excluded and ask, what are you? Which is the worst question you can ask another human being. I would like to move forward and say, what resources can you bring to the table? I don't care if we have to buy us some land somewhere else. What resources, what talent you bring to the table so we move all of our people forward?
Okay.
Hi, it's so good to be here tonight. Just visiting Detroit after living here for almost 9 years at Njia. I'm in Njia. I'm really touched by what you said. I'm in Njia because I, for a long time, didn't quite fit anywhere. So I'm Trini born. I was raised in Nova Scotia, Canada, largest Black Indigenous population in Canada, which a lot of people don't know about. And I lived in Toronto for 11 years. I lived here for 8.5 years, and now I've been in Baltimore 7 years. And I could say that I've never quite fit. So I remember moving to Nova Scotia at 8 and having a very strong Trinidadian accent, and that no one, when I looked to the Black Canadians, I was rejected. They thought I lived in a hut, and I was Tarzan, and we lived in trees in Africa, and then I was from the Caribbean. And so I felt very rejected by Black Canadians for a long time. And it's interesting in this journey from Nova Scotia to Toronto, and then I moved back to Trinidad, and then I've been in Detroit. It was here that I started to not feel so different, because in Detroit reminded me most of my childhood in Trinidad, and I started to see how when people of color live, when there's a majority of us and a minority of the economic superiors, how we're so much alike. And I think until I lived in Detroit for 8 years, I would hear people say things. I said, oh, I thought that was Trini. And I started to see all the similarities. And I was never one to think of African Americans in any lesser way, but certainly my friends and some of my family in Canada were appalled that I was moving to Detroit, even if I was moving here to work at the DIA, which is a great art museum. And so I have become this bridge. And I think what I keep saying to my African American friends is that the media is really what drives that image of you as less to a lot of Caribbean people. And I remember a friend of mine from Chicago came to Toronto with me, and they were showing, what was that Hustle and Flow movie? And so I said, think of being Caribbean or from the continent and not knowing any African Americans, okay? And all you know about African Americans are what you see on television and the movies, particularly at that time. Things are so much better. Now we're seeing, and think of what you would think of an African American. And then if you were moving to the US, and you saw how African Americans were treated, think of going to the US and being the same skin color. There's a lot of fear in a lot of us from the diaspora and from the continent that if we come and we don't disassociate ourselves from African Americans, that we'll be treated the same, not understanding that, as you say, they find out that no one's speaking to you when they see you, so you are Black, African American, Black, whatever, so then there's that level playing field. And it seems that it takes usually an act of violence or something just outrightly racist for us to get it. So I will say this, it's taken me, I've been in the US 16 years, now I live in Baltimore, another Black majority city with a whole lot of different problems. And I finally came to the realization that I spent a lot of time trying to be like an African American because I felt so different. And I think that you said something, unification of oneself. And so I think that I'm there in that. I'm Trini, Canadian, Detroit, a little bit of Baltimore. But my purpose really is, I do public relations for a living, and my real purpose is that I believe that people of color, particularly Blacks, we have this raw talent in so many areas. And the arts and culture world is so ridiculously bureaucratic and business-centered, and so part of me is I want to work with artists to help them understand that commerce side, so that they too can be, financially successful. So again, I stopped trying so hard to fit anywhere, and I think I now see that I'm Black, I'm Trini, whatever. I'm a woman of color who's proud of my African roots. And so now I can operate, I feel comfortable going anywhere, whether it's Puerto Rican or Cuban or African American, because I finally understand that we are one regardless, of our background. So thank you for this, because these are the conversations that engender us to understand there are some differences, but at the end of the day, we certainly are one. So thanks for this. This is a good reminder.
How many people in this room were born outside of America? Could you raise your hands? Because one time when we were doing an event downtown, And they were like, well, Njia, you know, that's gonna really bring a lot of, a certain demographic downtown. I said, well, are you afraid that if 5,000 black people come down here, that that's not fulfilling the mission? And they were like, well, no, we're not trying to say that. I said, because what you think is that you're gonna get 5,000 of what you think are East Siders, and you don't realize that when black faces show up in the city of Detroit, this is an international city. There are people from all over the world, black, brown, beige, and tan. And that's one of the deals that happens, is that that's one of the reasons why it's so complex to pull together sometimes. Is because we do have people who actually recognize and know their culture, who can trace themselves and have a totally, you know, clear picture of who they are. And then we've got a whole bunch of other people who really are blowing in the wind, who don't know what culture is and are certain that if there is one, it's something white and American. And so it makes for all this crazy. So it's always wonderful to find, you know, like that's the African World Festival's intention, is to celebrate the world of Africans and our Africanness as it appears in all its many different appearances. And, you know, just to celebrate the us, because hell, it's just amazing. It's a testament to our whole, you know, cosmic melanated selves that we are here and sane. And have a forward thought and a potential, you know, a vision that is moving into the future, given the realities from every place. What did Marcus tell us? Everywhere we are. Ta-da.
I hate to be the one that has to remind us that we are on a time schedule. You're approaching 8:30. I believe it is just about 8:30 now.
8:17.
8:17. So we have just time for maybe one or two. I saw the sister here and then the brother, and I'm trying to be fair on how I saw the man. So I saw the sister, then the brother, and then I saw the sister here. So I don't know if we'll have time to get to all three, but I just want to make this a point on this book.
Well, first I'd like to greet everyone with the greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum to my Muslim brothers and sisters. My father was an immigrant to this country. He immigrated here in the 70s from Ghana. And however, my mother is American-born, African-American. And so when people would rush up to me sometimes, like, oh, you know, where do you come from? Where's your heritage? I would just look at them and say, New Jersey. Because I didn't appreciate being treated like there's a division and there's some difference between my parents. I was proud of both of them. You know, I didn't want to hide that my mother was African American. And yes, we did come through slavery and through the diaspora. So when people would ask me where I came from, I did not say, oh yeah, well, I'm Ghanaian. No, I'm African American. And I don't have a problem with that. And as a child, I was the African girl in the neighborhood. But I was only African with my family. Okay, other Africans did not embrace me or identify me as an African because my mother was American. And you haven't been there. Have you ever been to Africa? Okay, so how can you call yourself African? You know, so I do not allow other people to define me, and that's what I instill in my children. You don't allow another person to tell you who you are, what you are, where you come from, and you are not black. People, you know, thought we were snobs or whatever. No, you're not black. That's a classification, okay? It doesn't identify your culture. It doesn't identify your religion. It doesn't have anything to do with your character or the gifts that the Lord has given you. No, you're not black. It's a classification. And there are many African American people who passed for European. Okay? And then we have so many other nationalities that are even darker than many of us. Okay, but they're still called Indian or Mexican or whatever they are.
Yes, sir.
All right? So I had to work really hard with instilling different things in my children, and I didn't feel the need to identify one way or the other. You know, choose. I'm not going to choose. We're all African as far as I'm concerned. There's no difference. And I had, you know, those challenges with African Americans and with the Africans. Oh, you're not African. Don't tell me what I am. Did I ask you? Okay, so it's just important for us all to embrace each other and have more unity and stop looking for the differences. And because that's what has torn us apart, and it's just continuing on, that divide and conquer. And it's a very simple tactic, so it's like, when are we going to wisen up?
Peace and love, everyone.
Peace.
When I was born, my name was Javante Allery Porter, and as of today, my name is Nguvu Javante Tasare. And I said that because Baba at the table, he, made the comment that he wished there were more young people, and even though they're not here, we are here. I'm 27 years old, and I'm old enough to where I wasn't around when all of my heroes and sheroes were around, but I'm young enough to remember a society in the 90s when people called me crazy for being pro-black or crazy for being conscious. It wasn't really until Trayvon Martin, when the younger generation started really waking up, and I came into consciousness maybe 5 or 6 years before that, and I was crazy. I was the psycho, the weirdo, the guy who was going to grow up and be a terrorist one day because I just happened to know who I was as an African. And I only have one request, and that's to the elders in the room. I'm a proud member, a longtime member of New Era Detroit, and there are a lot of us in these streets of my generation working to create a better future for future generations, just like you all did when you were our age. And I just ask for your protection, and I ask that as the media right now tries to attack us and slander us and make up false stories and splice images of us and put us into situations we had nothing to do with, that we all remember history and remember what they did to other organizations. And I just felt compelled to make that request, because sometimes we get divided along many lines. We get divided along geographic lines, and we get divided along age lines. And to my African family, to my family who was born on the continent, the day I changed my name was one of the most defining moments in my life. And I wore that dashiki. I had the Kwanzaa candles out at my party. And that was a moment that meant so much to me, because I don't have much to hold on to with my African identity because of slavery. And if you can say anything to your African family, to your family who comes from the continent, is to explain to them how much just knowing a little bit of Swahili makes a black person in America feel like they're human again. And I watched that video, and I've been emotional. I wasn't gonna come today, I just happened to see this on Facebook, and I was reminded that this was happening. And I saw the video, and it just made me really emotional, because every single step I've ever taken has been to get closer to who I am as an African. And to hear people who don't accept me as that, it hurts. And so, like the sister just said, if we could all practice one word, umoja, unity, it would really, really go a long way. So please protect us, and please accept us. And I think that we'll continue to make progress.
You got us. Always
Peace, everyone. My name is Akira. I'm 20 years old. My mother invited me here. I didn't know about this event prior to, but something that really hit with me with this theme is that my mother did not allow me to feel shame as a child. I found that in a lot of the history books that talk about black people in slavery, they instill shame, because young children, that's the time where when they're bad, you shame them. So that's what they use in the books to hit the kids. And so I would come home And I'll be like, Mom, my teacher said this, this, and that. And my mother, she gave me a collegiate education the minute I stepped in school in first grade. She countered everything my teachers ever said, to the point that when I went to public school in Ann Arbor, filled with white people and unfortunately ignorant black people who did not know their roots and didn't want to connect, because when you tried to connect them, they didn't want to hear about it.
Right.
I was the kid in the classroom